In this class, we'll go over the previous UTME past questions. You'll find useful tips and tricks alongside the correct answers and solutions for all the government questions. Like always, we'll be using the ExamGuide app. You can download and practice more past questions using this app. Let's get started. Now, this first question says, laws made by military government at state level are called. Now, this question takes your knowledge on military government. You know, the military government at the central level, the central government makes a law called decrees. Now, at a state level, in a federal system of government, at the state level, the state governors, the military administrators at the state level make laws called edicts. Now, edict is the answer. Acts are laws made by normal legislators. So it's not, bylaws are laws made by local authorities. So A is the answer. Now, the next question says, the reason behind Nigeria's suspension from Commonwealth in the year 1995 was, is it political, is it war, is it socio-cultural, is it legal? Now, this is a political matter because Nigeria was suspended from Commonwealth in 1995 over the killing of King Serowiwa and other Ogoni activists by the government of late General Sani Abacha. So based on that perceived human rights violation, Nigeria was suspended and not expelled from Commonwealth of Nations. So that makes it a political matter. Now, the next question says, number 3, the necessary attributes of a state are, remember, a state is a politically organized group of people occupying a definite territory with a government or a supreme power with a supreme power to make and enforce laws within the territory without any form of external aggression. Now, the attributes of states are, we have government, we have defined territory, we have population, we have sovereignty, and also we have other attribute recognition. Now, this A says defined territory, population, sovereignty, and the government. B says police is not a unique feature of state. Army is not. Sovereignty is, custom is not. Resources not a unique feature of a state. Population is, sovereignty is, government is. D says sovereignty, police, army, immigration. It's only sovereignty that is a unique feature of a state. Rather, A harbors all the unique features or the unique features of the state, which are defined territory, population, sovereignty, and government. So A is the answer. The next question says, the Secretary General of OAU holds office for a renewable period of how many years? Now, this person holds office for 4 years, renewable for just one period. So it's just 4 years that the AOU chairman holds office. So B is the answer. It's not A, which is 5. It's not C, which is 3 years. It's not D, which is 7 years. Now, the next question, 5th question says, an example of a country ruled by a constitutional monarch is, now, among all of them, Morocco is a kingdom. In fact, the current king of Morocco is King Mohammed VI. So Morocco is the answer because Morocco has a constitutional monarchy. Now, this question says, one of the major problems of Nigerian federalism. Now, this question tests your knowledge of Nigerian federalism, and especially with reference to the problems of Nigerian federalism, which include revenue allocation, problem of minority, and the police, over concentration of powers at the central government. Then we have imbalance structure of federal system and others. Now, if you look at this option, A says lack of revenue to cater for the demands of the federation. It's not really a peculiar problem in our federation. Number B, the B says inadequate manpower to fill vacancies. Of course, we have adequate manpowers in our federation. D says pre-colonial administrative structure among the units of the federation is not a problem. Rather, C, imbalance in the structure and sizes of the units of the federation. Now, Nigeria has 6 geopolitical zones. Now, in the 6 geopolitical zones, you find out that this, if you come to South, we have South-South has 6 states, Southwest has 6 states, Southeast has only 5 states. Now, if you come to the North, North Central has 6 states, Northeast has 6 states, and Northwest has 7 states. Now, based on this, you can see that there is imbalance here. The Southeast is having just 5 states, while others have 6 states, and the Northwest has 7 states. So there is this complaint of imbalance and the structure and the sizing of the units of the federation. And also in terms of imbalance, when you look at some states, especially in the north, you see that a state is almost as large as the entire south in the northern region. So that's the imbalance. Now, which of the following is a feature of checks and the balances? Remember, checks and balances is a democratic process by which each arm of government serves as a check on the other arm of government to prevent one organ from becoming too powerful or to prevent dictatorship. Now, in checks and balances, you talk about how the executive serves as a check on the other arm of government. Of course, the legislature serves as a check on the on the executive by impeaching the executive when he commits a gross misconduct. Now, the one that is mentioned here, the judiciary, how does it check the other organs of government? It does it through the process of judicial review, where the judiciary can declare the action of any other arm of government null and void, that is ultra vires and of no effect. So B is the judicial review. Code of conduct, which is A, is not the answer. Judicial immunity is not the answer. Judicial precedent is just the rulings of a higher court, especially the Supreme Court. So judicial review is how the legislature checks other organs of government. Now, this question says, one of the main duties of the Local Government Service Commission is to, now this tests your knowledge on 1976 local government reform. You know, the 1976 local government reform establishes the Local Government Service Commission, which is responsible for the senior staff of local government. Now, if you look at the option, it says supervises and manage the personnel of local government. That's A. B says, and those requests for the creation of more local government, it does not do that. C says, it creates an enabling working environment for council workers. D, conduct elections in local government council. Of course, the conduct of elections in the local government council is done by the state independent electoral commission. So the answer is supervise A, which says supervise and manage the personnel of local government. That's their duty, personnel, especially the senior staff of the local government. Now, this number 9 question says, which of the following is a guiding principle of Nigerian foreign policy? Now, is testing your knowledge on Nigerian foreign policy. Remember, foreign policy has to do with the principle guiding a nation's interaction with other countries and has stand on international questions. Now, principles guiding Nigerian foreign policy, of course, promotion of national interests, non-alignment with any world power and any power bloc in international politics, Africa as the centerpiece of Nigerian foreign policy, maintenance of promotion of peace and security of the world, and also the decolonization of Africa. Now, if you see A says decolonization of all African states, B says total opposition to the Cold War, C says interference in the affairs of African countries, D says posting of only career diplomats as envoys. Now, A is the answer, decolonization of African states. And that is why Nigeria keyed in as one of the founding members of OAU, Organization of African Unity, which has as one of its chief aims to see to the eradication of colonialism in Africa. So that is A. So it's not total opposition to the Cold War. Yes, Nigeria foreign policy stands for non-alignment, but non-alignment has to do with being neutral. So not really to oppose, but to be neutral, not taking side with any of the power blocs. Now, let's look at this question. This question says, one of the main advantage of bicameral legislature is that remember, bicameral legislature refers to two-chamber legislature. Example, in Nigerian National Assembly, we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. These two makes it a bicameral legislature. And it tests your knowledge on why countries adopt bicameral legislature. Of course, you know, it caters for local differences and different diversities in the nation. It allows for more representation. It allows bills to be properly scrutinized, and it promotes a strong check on the executive arm of government. Now, the option says, makes passage of bill easy. Of course, you talk about easy passage of bill in a unicameral legislature, so it's not the answer. B says, makes for quick deliberation during emergencies. Now, this one is an advantage of unicameral legislature. C says, it's not easy to manipulate bills. D says, less cumbersome to pass bill. Now, this is also applicable to unitary. So A, B, D are applicable to the advantages of unicameral legislature. But bicameral legislature has advantage of it is not easy to manipulate bill, because bills are thoroughly screened in a bicameral legislature, because first is to go from one chamber of legislature that will deliberate it to the other chamber. And you even have committee of the whole joint session of the whole house. So not easy to manipulate bills. You can't manipulate bill here. Now, one feature of public corporation that was weakened by privatization is, remember, public corporation as a government-owned enterprise established by Act of Parliament to provide essential services to the public at subsidized rate. Now, why privatization is the process of transferring ownership of public enterprise to private individuals. So one feature of public corporation that was weakened by privatization, that is talking about the effect of privatization. A says social control, no. B says governmental control, no. C says national integration. D says social harmony. Now, one feature that is weakened is governmental control, because this time it will shift from government control to private ownership and control. Now, United Nations succeeded this question tests your knowledge on the origin of United Nations. Remember, the world started having world organization after the First World War. Now, after the First World War, the first international organization was founded, which is the League of Nations. But with the breakout of the Second World War from 1939 to 1945, the United Nations was formed. And because of that, League of Nations collapsed. So United Nations succeeded League of Nations. Now, NATO is not Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is the organization that was there during the Cold War, headed by United States of America and Western Europe. It's a bloc on its own. The Warsaw Pact was led by Russia. It's the Eastern Bloc. These are the blocs during the Cold War. So CETO is also not, it's League of Nations. Now, the next question says, the number of permanent members of the United Nations Security Council is, remember, in United Nations, testing your knowledge on the composition of United Nations Security Council. Now, United Nations Security Council has 15 members. Now, 5 members are permanent, and the 5 members are US, Russia, Britain, China, and France. These are the 5 permanent members. Now, the other members are non-permanent. They rotate them every 2 years. So it is 5, like I mentioned. Okay, so it's not 6, it's not 8, it's neither 7. Now, the power of appointing the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission is vested in the... Now, this question tests your knowledge on the composition, the structure of INEC, especially in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria has INEC. So, it's the president that does that. Judicial Council had no hand in the appointment of the INEC chairman. Now, the Council of State has no hand, where you have Council of State is the organization that has the president, and the former heads of state in it. Now, the Senate only approves the appointment. So it's the president that nominates, does the appointment of the chairman of Independent National Electoral Commission. No other body does it. Now, the NCEE and the NPC facilitate the creation of the DASH. Now, of course, it didn't create the Northern region. We had regionalism in 1945, even before the formation of NCEE and NPC. Eastern region, the same 1945. Western region, the same 1945. All these A, B, D were created by a MacPherson Constitution of 1945, but during colonial administration. Now, NCEE and NPC were in power during the independence and also the First Republic. And it was in 1963 in a coalition government headed by NPC and NCEE. That was why during this period, NPC, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa was the prime minister, the head of government. Nanda Azikiwe of NCEE was the head of state. So it was the Midwestern region that was created by the government of these, headed by those parties in 1963. Now, a flexible constitution is one which is A, says known to all, B, says easily amended, C, says written by the parliament, D, popular with the legislatures. Of course, this question tests your knowledge on the types of constitution. Remember, we have types. We have the written, which is a constitution which is documented in a single document. We have the unwritten, where the provisions are not found in a single document. Now, we also have a rigid constitution, which is a constitution that requires stringent procedures for it to be amended. On the other hand, we have what we call the flexible constitution, which is a constitution that does not require a rigorous procedure before it can be amended. Now, this makes it easily amendable. So that is why B, which is easily amended, is the answer to a flexible constitution. Now, this question says, the main function of the Federal Character Commission in Nigeria. Remember, the Federal Character was formed in the 1990s by Abacha administration around 1996. Now, the Federal Character Commission is established to enforce federal character in federal agencies and establishments. And what is it about this federal character? It's a principle that enforces the fact that every appointment or recruitment in federal government establishments must reflect the diversity of Nigeria. So this commission is created to enforce and ensure that any appointment or recruitment into federal government establishments and agencies must reflect the diversity of the country. Now, the option says reviewing unfair administrative decisions. B says ensuring fair representation of all states in the public service. C says settling disputes among societies. D says providing free social services to all citizens. So from what I've explained initially, you'll see that B as the answer, which is that the Federal Character Commission in Nigeria ensures fair representation of all states in public service. So any appointment to the public service must come from different states of the country. Now, which of the following, this number 18 question, which of the following is not a dimension of public opinion? Now, we have different dimensions of public opinion. We have direction. Direction has to be with the stand of citizen. That's the yes or no of citizen on a particular public issue. We have intensity, which has to do with how strong their conviction is. We have stability, which has to do with the duration of the opinion held by the citizen. Now, this question makes sense to say, if you look at it, orientation is not a dimension. Substance is not a dimension. Polling is not a dimension of public opinion. Rather, what is a dimension of public opinion is intensity. So this question should be, which of the following is a dimension of public opinion? Now, the division of powers between the federal and regional government into exclusive, concurrent, residual list was done by of course, you know that in a federal government, powers are divided between the central government and the component units. And it is divided into what we call exclusive list, where only the federal government can handle. Concurrent, that's issues that both the federal government and the state government can handle. Residual list, where the component, that's the regions, state exclusively handled. Now, it was done by the 1999 Constitution. It didn't introduce that. It's independent constitution. Now, all these constitutions maintained it, but though it started from 1954, the written constitution, and was concreted by the Independence Constitution of 1960. Now, all these constitutions maintained this provision. So it is the Independence Constitution. Now, Nigeria is regarded as a frontline state because she is it assisting ECOMOG troops in Liberia? Has it assisted liberation struggle in South Africa? Send policemen for peacekeeping mission in Nigeria? They send troops for peacekeeping mission in Somalia. Now, Nigeria, it's regarded as a frontline state because of the fact that she championed the liberation struggle from white minority rules in South Africa. Nigeria did this in Angola. Nigeria did this in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Nigeria also fought vehemently against South African apartheid policy. So in South Africa, their struggle for liberation against white minority rule, Nigeria played a crucial role. And that is why Nigeria is regarded as a frontline state, not because it assisted ECOMOG in sending troops to maintain peace in Liberia. Of course, Nigeria didn't send policemen for peacekeeping in Nigeria. It's the duty of the state, actually, but it's not because of that. It's not because Nigeria sent peacekeeping in Somalia. No, it's because of the struggle, has assisted in liberation struggle in South Africa. Now, a problem of public cooperation in Nigeria is A, emphasis on subsidies, B, choice of leaderships, C, public control, D, wastage of resources. Now, all these are not pro A, emphasis of subsidy, C, B, choice of leadership. Well, the answer is D, wastage of resources, which is coming from corruption, embezzlement of fund of public corporation. So the public corporation, you see at times they waste resources. There was a time NMPC in Nigeria gave a breakdown of your expenses, and the billions of naira was allotted to entertainment, around 30 million or so to entertainment. So they waste public fund, wastage of resources. It's one of their major problems. Now, 22 question says, in the pre-colonial Hausa political system, the Madawaki performed the function of. Now, this question tests your knowledge not just on pre-colonial political system in Hausa Fulani Kingdom, but also the functions of the officials. Remember the officials? You have the Waziri, which is the Prime Minister, Sakenrowa, head of water, Sakin Power, that of Bocha, Hakimi, head of districts, Madawaki as the Minister of Defense. That's in charge of the army. So that's the answer. It's not Minister of Interior. They didn't have any education. They didn't have a Minister of Wars. Rather, the education is about Islam. And the idea you talk about the Malam the imams. Now, the main objective of pressure group is to A, serve as opposition to the government. B, protect the interests of the country against foreigners. C, influence legislation for benefit of their members. D, promotes interests of political parties. This question tests your knowledge of pressure group. Now remember, pressure group is an organized group of people which aim to influence government policies and decisions in the interest of their members. That is the main aim of pressure group. Now, how do they do it? One of the things they do, of course, we know that they go on strike to influence government policy, they engage government in dialogue, they write protest letter, they protest, they go on protest, then they use what we call lobby. And that lobby is a method by which the legislature, members of the parliament, are influenced by pressure group to make legislation in favor of their member, or to pass bill or to kill a bill in the interest of the members of the pressure group. That is why C is the answer. Now, the officer responsible for announcing the results of an election is known as. Now, this question tests your knowledge on officers in the election. Now, remember, we have the chairman of the Electoral Commission, who is the overall head of the Electoral Commission. We have commissioners, 12 commissioners, also appointed by the president. These commissioners are responsible for the different departments of the Electoral Commission. Now, we have what we call the electoral officer. The electoral officer is in charge of election at the local government level. That's the person that is in charge of State Electoral Commission. Now, we also have what we call presiding officer. Presiding officer is a person that works at the polling station. We have collation officers that receive results from the presiding officers and collations. And then we have returning officer. This is the person that is responsible, that they give the result, and this is the person that announces the result. So the answer is the returning officer. He announces the result and declares the winner of the result. Now, we have, in a democratic political system, the political sovereignty is usually there. Now, remember, democracy is a form of government in which supreme power, the governing power, the ultimate power, is vested in the people. And they exercise this power directly or indirectly through their elected representatives. So you can see, in a democratic society, the political sovereignty resides with the people. And the people are also the electorate. The electorate. So in voting, you'll see it's not just the people, but the electorate. So if the option has the people, we go for the people. But in the absence of the people, we go for the electorate that exercise this supreme power by voting, deciding who will be their government. Now, so C is the answer. Now, before 1945, the company units in Nigeria were. Now, this question tests your knowledge on what Bernard Bordelon did, the governor of Nigeria that succeeded Hugh Clifford. Now, he took over Nigeria in the 1930s, now, and ended in 1943. Now, this man actually in 1939 divided Nigeria into three provinces, north, west, and east. So it's provinces. Now, regions came in 1945 by Richard's Constitution. States came in 1967 by Yakubu Gowon. So districts is not district. We didn't use district. And this is some pre-colonial administration use district, and some colonial administrators, they use district. So A, provinces, is the answer to this question. So the ultimate aim of political parties is to, of course, this question tests your knowledge of political parties. Now, political parties are organized political groups that aim to form and they control the government by contesting and winning elections. So if you look at this option, A says acquire and exercise power, B says implement people-oriented program, C says increase the political awareness of the electorate. D says formulate and implement policies. Now, political parties do all this, but their main aim is A, which is acquire and exercise power, which is usually political. That acquire and exercise power is about control and form and control the government. So that is the answer. All these other ones, they do them when they get to power. The C, they do it during their campaigns and their debates. So A is the answer. Then number 2, this number 28, one of the basic features of a monarchical form of government is that, now this question tests your knowledge of monarchy. Monarchy is a form of government in which the king or queen or emperor rules. An ascension to the throne is through hereditary. Now, A is self-explanatory answer to this, succession to the throne through hereditary. B says members of the executive are elected, it's not monarchy. Separation of powers is absolute. You're talking about presidential system here. The ruler has a fixed tenure. You're talking about a republic here. So the answer is succession is through hereditary. That is A. Now, the general strike of 1945 was caused primarily by, now this general strike is the first strike we had in Nigerian political history. Now, this strike was based on effect of Second World War. Now, after the Second World War, we had inflation and economic recession in Nigeria. Cost of living became very high, and it was telling on public servants. Now, the public servant demanded for increment in salary of public servants. And of course, the colonial government did not cede to their request. And it is based on this that public servants in Nigeria during this colonial era in 1945 went on strike. So the option says, if you look at, let's start from D. D says persistent implementation of discriminatory laws is not that led to the strike. C says harshness in trade laws as it concerns the Africans. No. B says disparity in the criteria for employment is not the reason for the strike. Even though all these things were part of some of the things the nationalists reacted against. But the answer to this, like I've explained, is government's rejection of a demand for an increase of 50% in the cost of living allowance. That is increase in allowances and salaries of public servants. So that is what actually led to the strike. Now, this question says, the review of Nigerian foreign policy under the Murtala Obasanjo regime was done by, now, this people, Phillips Commission handled the issue of revenue, Udoji Commission revenue, Adeboye, minority. Now, it's Adediye that reviewed, Adediye Commission that reviewed Murtala Obasanjo's foreign policy. Now, the president of Nigeria was indirectly elected through secret ballot for a period of 5 years by the Senate in which constitution? Now, this question tests your knowledge of the constitutions we've had in Nigeria. Of course, D, we never had any 1983 constitution, so it's eliminated. Now, C, which is 1979 Constitution, is a federal constitution. Now, this federal constitution, is a presidential constitution. Now, a presidential constitution provided for a presidential system of government, where the head of state is also the head of government. Now, and is elected for 4 years, with his running mate, the vice president. So it's not 1979 Constitution. Now, in 1960 Constitution, it provided for parliamentary system of government. The Queen of England was still the head of state of Nigeria by 1960 Constitution, represented by a Governor General who is a Nigerian. This time, that was how Nnamdi Azikiwe became the first Governor General of Nigeria. So, she was not elected, the head of state of Nigeria. Then we had, of course, the prime minister, the head of government. But it was in 1963, the first Republican Constitution, that the Constitution, one, provided the office of the president, which replaced the Queen of England as the head of state of Nigeria. And this president, the Constitution provided that the president is to be elected by a joint session of the National Assembly through a secret ballot, and the president is to last in office for 5 years. So A, 1963 is the answer. Now, the former colonies of Britain belong to the association known as, now we talked to different international organizations in SS3, which Nigeria belonged to. That's the international organization land. We have the United Nations organization, which is an organization made up of all the countries of the world. We learned African Union, which is a union that harbors the whole African countries. We talked about ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, which is made up of West African states, West African countries. We also did Commonwealth, which is made up of mainly former British colonies. So to this effect, D, which is Commonwealth, is the answer. Now, question 33 says, the name of the subject you are doing, of course, is government. It's not biology, it's not mathematics, it's not literature, it's government that we're talking about. The old Oyo Empire, the Ajele, A, ensures safety of all trade routes. B, mobilizes the army. C, ensures good governance of the districts. D, was the head of the army. Actually, the Ajele was the head of a district. So he ensured, to that effect, he ensured good governance of the district. Now, the process of taking part in political and public affairs can be termed political. So this question tests your knowledge of political participation, which is the taking part, the involvement of citizens in political affairs of their state. So it's political participation. Now, it's not recognition, it's not socialization, political socialization, which has to do with learning, teaching and learning, and assimilation of political norms, values, and ideas of a state. Is not political culture, which is the political way of life of people of a state. Now, the main representative body of United Nations is the A, Trustship Council. B, Secretariat. C, Security Council. D, General Assembly. Now, United Nations has principal organs. One, we have the General Assembly, which is the organization that is made up of 193 countries of the world, recognized countries of the world. Now, this Security Council is the strongest organ, but it has 15 member countries in it, 5 permanent members and 10 others non-permanent. We have the Secretariat, which is the administrative organ of United Nations organization, headed by a Secretariat. We have the Trustship Council, there for the acceleration of independence of trust territories. Of course, we also have Economic and Social Council. Now, this is the only arm, the only organ that has all member countries in it is the General Assembly. And that is why it is the main representative body of United Nations. Now, unitary system of government, question number 37. Unitary system of government is more suitable to a country. Now, remember, unitary system of government is a system of government where governmental powers are concentrated and the central government, one single authority. And this system of government is usually applicable where you talk about a small country, a small state, and usually homogeneous in nature. That is a state that has people from the same ethnic group. So when you have that, you can run a unitary system. So option A says, with a country suitable to a country with a robust and dynamic economy, is not the peculiar thing that will make a country to adopt unitary system. B, with relatively small area and homogeneous population. B is the answer from what I have explained. C, that possesses a strong and modern army, no? D, that is sparsely populated. Okay, sparsely, small population, but this one says homogeneous population. So B is the answer. Question 38. Commonwealth nations are represented in other member nations by, A says ambassadors. Now, ambassadors, you see them when you talk about United Nations member countries. Now, you have attached, no? Cadets, charge the officers, no? It's high commissioners. That is why in Nigeria, you talk about Canadian High Commission, South African High Commission, British High Commission. The head of these high commissions and all these countries I mentioned are members of Commonwealth. So they exchange high commissions. They don't use embassy, high commissions. And the head of the high commissions are the high commissioners. So Commonwealth nations are represented by high commissioners. Now, question 39 says, the emergence of nationalism was essentially the result of the ills. It tests your knowledge on nationalism. Now, nationalism has to do with the reaction of colonized people against colonialism and the practices associated with colonialism. Now, it's based on the ills not of independence. Of course, the ultimate aim of nationalism is independence. Is against colonialism. It's in the context of colonialism that we talk about nationalism. It's not against imperialism. Imperialism can exist, is part of colonialism, can also exist outside colonialism. After colonialism, you can still talk about, we are still under imperialism as a country in Nigeria because of new colonialism. It's not ills of slavery, rather it's colonialism. Now, the granting of asylum to Charles Taylor by Nigeria, that was in 2003 under President Obasanjo, when there was a civil war in Liberia, and the president of Liberia, Charles Taylor, came to Nigeria to seek protection. Now, Nigeria granted that asylum. Is it to control Liberia? No. Liberia, is it? B, promote peace in Liberia? Yes, it's to promote peace because there was also a revolt against the president. So to maintain peace, to avoid killing the president that can escalate the conflict, Nigeria had to protect the man. Now, the body that is responsible for the appointment, discipline, promotion, and dismissal of civil servants is the DAS. Now, remember, when you did civil service, we talked about a body that is responsible for the appointment, the discipline, promotion, and dismissal, and it's no other body than the Civil Service Commission. Now, Ministry of Labor and Productivity does not do that. Even the Civil Service Commission recruits the workers, the staff of Ministry of Labor. It's not Ministry of Establishment. It's not Bureau for Public Service Reform. So the answer is Civil Service Commission. Now, the court that has the ultimate power to interpret the Constitution. Now, we are talking about the court that has the final say in the provision of the Constitution. The interpretation of what the Constitution has said is it Court of Appeal? No. Is it Magistrate Court? Is it High Court? Of course, it's Supreme Court. So constitutional matters are interpreted. It can go through High Courts, from High Court, you can go through Appeal Court, but the end, the one that has the final interpretation, final say on the provisions of the Constitution is the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land. Now, question 43 says, nationalist agitation began in Nigeria with the, is it annexation of Lagos in 1960? Is it the formation of West African Youth League that was formed in 1935, even outside Nigeria? Is it Lagos protest against water rate in 1908? Rather, it was the introduction of indirect rule system. Now remember, the educated elites pushed against colonial rule because they were alienated in the indirect rule system. The indirect rule system made use of the African traditional rulers. And these rulers were regarded as illiterates and became puppets of colonial administrations. The educated elites were alienated from the native authority system that was made up of indirect rule. So it was based on that the educated elites started the agitation. Even the introduction of warrant chiefs in the southeastern region using this indirect rule system was also protested against. So we can look at the agitation from the introduction of indirect rule system. Now, the development of a classless society is the goal of. Now, remember, a classless society is a state without class. And they refer to it, the masses refer to it as a stateless society. Remember, society moved from communalism, where there was no class, to feudalism, where we had classes. That is the privileged, the lords, and the serfs. Then we moved to capitalism and had two classes. The bourgeoisie, that's the capitalists, the owners of means of production, and on the other hand, the proletariat, that's the workers that were working for the owners of means of production. Now, based on the evil of capitalism, Marx projected that there will be another society that will overthrow capitalist mode of production, which is socialism, where we have dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, from the socialist stage, which is a transitional stage, we're going to have the ultimate goal, which is communism, a classless society. Now, this ideology was championed by a founder, which is Karl Marx, and the believers. All of them make up what we call Marxism. So Marxism B is the answer. It's not liberalism. Liberalism is found in capitalism, where you talk about class society. It's not conservatism. Conservatives want to maintain the status quo. Of course, feudalism, we have class, the lords and the serfs. So B, Marxists, is the answer. Now, the Technical Aid Corps established during the regime of Babangida, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. Now, this is a foreign policy scheme that was meant for empower Nigerians to voluntarily work outside Nigerians and also help to empower some other people outside the country voluntarily. Now, it was Babangida that introduced that Technical Aid Corps. Now, the citizenship acquired by an alien is true. Now, we have ways of acquiring citizenship here. Of course, we know that the major ways we have by birth, which is natural. We have naturalization, by which an alien can acquire citizenship after staying in a country for a long time. We have conferment, where citizenship is given as an award. We also have registration. Now, actually, birth is not for alien. We don't have internalization. Now, an alien can be conferred, but he will not acquire, he will not work towards it. But here, registration, an alien who is married to a citizen will acquire citizenship through registration. So there is a process he will take to acquire citizenship. An adopted person, adopted by a citizen, can acquire citizenship through registration. So it requires a process. Conferment would have been the answer, but it does not take the process that registration requires. So registration is more acquired than conferment. Though conferment requires that you must have done something remarkable for a country to award you that. Now, which of the following nationalists was the founder of Nigeria's foremost or first political party? Now, remember, the first political party was founded in 1923 after the Clifford Constitution of 1922. And this political party is Nigerian National Democratic Party, and it was founded by the father of Nigerian nationalists, who is no other person but Herbert Macaulay. Now, the next question says, Option A4 model was used in the conduct of the which election? Now, option A4 model was a model that was introduced by Professor Humphrey Nwosu, who was the chairman of National Electoral Commission of Nigeria when 1993 election was conducted. Option A4 was an open ballot system where people will queue behind the candidate, the poster of their candidate, and after that, the voting, they will do the voting. Now, the voting will be used to cross-check whether the people that queued behind this candidate synchronizes with the voting actually for a particular candidate. Now, it was in 1993 general elections that we had option A4 model, which was introduced by Professor Humphrey Nwosu. It's not 1993 election, it's not 1983 election, it's not 2007 election. Now, question 49 says, which of the following was done during the Gowon administration to reduce structural imbalance in the federation? Now, this question tests the fact that we know that one of the problems of Nigerian federation is structural imbalance. Now, before Gowon came on board, Nigeria had 4 regions. The regions were the North, the East, the West, and the Midwestern region. Now, the Midwestern region, the West, and the Eastern region, the North was more than 2 times of these 3 regions put together. So these people from the South, they complain of imbalance of the federal structure. And also, of course, the minority issues have been there as a problem of Nigerian federalism. So what Gowon did to actually address the issue is the creation of 12 states in May 1967. He didn't appoint ministers to address it. He didn't increase revenue allocation. He didn't form political parties. Of course, Gowon's administration is a military regime. So what he eventually did is to create 12 states to address the imbalance in our federal structure. Now, the next question says, membership of a society is dash. Now, this question tests your knowledge on different forms of association. Of course, you were taught state, taught nation, taught society. A state, on the other hand, on one hand, is a group of people made up, politically organized group of people occupying a definite territory with a government that has with supreme power to make and enforce laws with all coercive means against the employee without external interference. A nation, on the other hand, is a group that share common culture, value, origin, language, occupying a territory. Now, society, on the other hand, is a voluntary association of people who have come together to achieve a common goal. Now, membership of states is compulsory. Membership of society, on the other hand, is not by constitution, it's not constitutional, it's not conventional, it's not mandatory. Rather, people volunteer to join society. So, strictly, society membership is voluntary. So, this is the last question of this session. We have come to the end of this class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide application. See you in the next class. Bye.